All right, and I am happy to welcome back in, as I do every single week, the Hall of Famer, John Smoltz. John, how are we doing this week?
We're doing great. We're getting closer again to those playoffs.
Closer and closer and closer to the awards being finalized as well, which is something I wanted to talk to you about first. NL Rookie of the Year. I talked to my last show, Jackson Merrill versus Paul Skenes. It got to a point where it was going to be Paul Skenes' award. It's as much of a lock as you can have in July. And then over the span of a couple of weeks, this has become quite the race with what Jackson Merrill's doing out there in San Diego. Historic things, late clutch homers in the eighth inning or later. He's 21 years old. And now we have a real race here, John. So if I were to ask you, Jackson Merrill or Paul Skenes, who do you think is going to win the NL Rookie of the Year?
Well, again, I always think that the edge, if it's close, goes to a position player. And, I'm a pitcher, but if somehow Paul Skenes were to get his team into the playoffs, it would be that much more special for a pitcher, even though he's once every 5 days. But I think you're right. It's come closer to the edge of this being really tight, and Merrill would get the nod. No, Skenes is so dynamic. I'm not so sure if the Pirates fall out of it that they don't shut down Skenes anyways. So that's a narrative that would come into play, unfortunately. And I'd like to see each have their own award. I'd like to see a rookie pitcher of the year and a position player rookie of the year.
That is actually what I was going to ask you if you think we should have that. So, what makes you say that? For this exact reason?
For this exact reason, you have dynamics at play that are not they're not apples and apples. They're apples and oranges. It's the same discussion we've had when should a pitcher win the MVP. I think you have to do something so special to separate yourself from someone who plays every day. It's hard for a pitcher to walk into a locker room and have an impact other than leadership, and that's even hard. When someone's playing every single day, it's a different discussion. And I know pitchers have won the MVP before, and I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm just saying in general, it's a hard discussion to have unless there is not really a breakout MVP candidate on the everyday player.
So, you think if Paul Skeens ends up down the stretch, Pirates are shutting him down, then this is going to be Jackson Merrill's award to win. But if Paul Skeens can keep going and do exactly what he's been doing every start for the next 5 or 6 days, then that's where he wins this award.
Yeah, I think so. Because again, the argument would be a good one. What's harder to do, hit as a rookie or pitch as a rookie?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
as a rookie hitter, you're facing so many different pitchers in the league that is full of just young, great players. Don't get me wrong. But to do that every day and put up numbers versus once every 5 days is operator for me. And I could be biased and just say, no, it's all about the pitcher. I'm being realistic and understanding that in time, when you make 34, 35 starts, that's a different argument
Yeah.
than a guy who's been up most of the year and then a guy who comes up and does what he does.
Yeah. Well, Jackson Merrill on that red hot San Diego Padres team. Let's talk NL West. You have the San Diego Padres, one of the hottest teams in all of baseball, but they're not even hotter than another team in their division, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Those two teams have been on an absolute tear. You have the Dodgers finally getting Mookie back and having that big three back together. So my question to you is how many NL West teams do you see making the playoffs? Do you think it's going to be all three? Do you think it's going Dodgers, Padres, and Diamondbacks all making the playoffs?
What's amazing, if you'd asked me this before the All-Star break or even before that, I said there's no chance. I mean, there's no chance that three teams are going to make it. Now it's about an 80% favorite. Three teams are going to make it at the rate they're going. So it's amazing how quickly things can change. San Diego has done an incredible job with their injuries, their roster. The Diamondbacks are feeding off of last year right now. They're humming. They've won some miracle games. They've done things that they did last year at the end of September. It's almost like you think they're pushing a button. There's no button that they can push, but they're feeding off of it. So
Yeah.
it's going to be exciting down the stretch. And I really think now we're talking about a fun race, right? We're talking about the Mets, the Braves, and then those two teams you talked about. with maybe an outside chance, maybe of another team getting hot and sneaking in there. But the realistic thing is it's going to come down to those four teams for three positions. And the divisions are pretty much set. Although in the West, that was the one that was supposed to be a foregone conclusion. Now has that's been for potential teams to maybe unseat the Dodgers, which we didn't think was possible.
No, we did not. If you had to say, do you think the Dodgers still win that division, or would you like the Padres or Diamondbacks to take it from them?
I think that the Dodgers still win that division.
Yeah.
Dodgers, I think, I don't know if this is internally or just nationally. I think they figured out we don't need to win 108 games. It's like we need to build a team that's going to give us a chance to run the gamut in the postseason. It's
Yeah.
going to get so enamored with, in my mind, like, okay, we need to win this by 12 games. Who cares? They know that's not the most important thing. Getting healthy and putting that roster in a position to dominate the 11 to 14, whatever it takes to win, that's what they're concerned about.
The Dodgers have won 0 titles that say you've won the division by 12 or more games. Congratulations. Over the last few years, it's all been about, well, they can't win in the first round of the playoffs. So at some point, like you said, you got to look in the mirror and realize what are we doing wrong? We have a great regular season team, but come playoff time, whether it's because we were able to coast into the playoffs and play however we wanted, or just because the roster wasn't constructed the right way, the Dodgers didn't have a team that was conducive of winning in October, and we'll have to see this year if that's changed.
Well, some of the moves they made was for that very topic, but the problem is, come those individual years, they've been beat up in their rotation, and they haven't had a rotation that can compete for a deep run.
Yeah.
They've always had a lineup. Now they need to get their starting rotation and their bullpen in order. And I think that's what the moves they made is to solidify that. And they just can't afford, like any other team, that timing is everything when it gets to the postseason.
I agree with you. It wasn't one of the bigger moves made of the trade deadline, but I do think that addition of Michael Kopech for them in the playoffs is going to be huge. Having an arm that can come out of the bullpen, throwing 100 miles an hour, he's got postseason stuff for sure. John, sticking with the Dodgers, Mookie Betts finally back in the lineup for the first time since I think June 16th is when he got hit. He's back. The Dodgers go on the road to Milwaukee. Mookie's first series back. And all of a sudden we hear, well, Mookie's not staying at the team hotel. It's the Pfister Hotel. It's a haunted hotel. Mookie's getting an Airbnb, and he is staying the hell away from that hotel. So I got to ask you, have you ever stayed at the Pfister Hotel?
Oh, yeah, a bunch of times. Yeah. And I don't claim to say it's haunted, but you hear that. That has been one of those things that's gone on for a long time. I think one of the things during COVID, I'm looking, but I thought the Cardinals got locked down in a hotel in Milwaukee. I think it was the Pfister, but I remember seeing them taking their mattresses and putting them vertical and having bullpen sessions in their hotel room, throwing into the to the mattress. I know Adam Wainwright was doing it, but yeah, I've heard fables, I've heard stories. And maybe there's people that go on quests to find the ghost, but I don't think it's haunted.
I have heard stories from more current players. I think Bryce Harper said his clothes were thrown around the room when he set them out. Carlos Gomez ran down into the lobby in his underwear because something was happening to him. From when you were playing, whether it's Braves teams or just stories you hear in Milwaukee, is there any story that you remember hearing that maybe you don't believe in it, maybe you don't think it's haunted, but any stories that you remember hearing?
Yeah, I don't really remember any stories. I know we had some guys that were afraid of a lot of things, like we did the pranks where we put a snake and a spider, a fake one, in the under. We got keys to the room to get in. They wouldn't go back in that room at all. We had that famous Tim Hudson, Eddie Perez thing where Tim hid in the closet with the Friday the 13th mask, and it's spooked out Eddie so bad that there's definitely pranks that have happened. I haven't heard any definitive other than maybe sounds or noises that were heard. I mean, there could be some maids on the gig that would throw around some clothes. Who knows, to make it seem like. But to each their own. Hey, if you feel it and you don't want to be part of it, then you have all the right to stay somewhere else.
That Carlos Gomez story, I was just reading about it. He was in the shower, and all of a sudden the iPod turns on. It was started playing static, and then he gets out, changes it to something else, and then there was something else that happened in the room, or it turned back to static. He freaked out, had just gotten out of the shower, runs down to the lobby in his underwear and starts putting on his pants while he's running down there. And that's one of my favorite stories from that hotel.
Oh, I can imagine if you get going about it, you start hearing things look and maybe even claim certain things. But that's all good and fun as long as you know people don't get too whacked out on it.
I absolutely agree. John, thanks as always, my friend. Where are you at this weekend?
I'm actually going to be in Milwaukee, so it's good. I might have to do some personal investigating on my own and see what I find out.
Do some investigating for us. Come back with a story next week. Nothing too crazy. We don't want any too crazy stories, but appreciate it as always, John. Have a great game and a great weekend.
You got it. My pleasure.
See ya. All right. Just wanted to thank John Smoltz again for joining us here on Flippin Bats. I totally agree. And that was going to be something I asked him, if you think you should have a pitcher and a hitter, NL Rookie of the Year award. I do think that makes a lot of sense for the exact reason. If this gets close at all, as it has started to, I think you have to go Jackson Merrill, with just one, Paul Skenes hasn't pitched the entire year. But two, he's only pitching every fifth or sixth day, and Jackson Merrill's out there playing every single day for a playoff team, being the reason his team is getting into the playoffs. So I like that there. I do think that should happen. Also on the Pfister Hotel, one of the stories, I believe it was Michael Young, didn't necessarily believe, but once he started hearing things, he heard footsteps in his room, and then he started telling the ghost, "Hey, I know you're there. Kick your feet up, sit back and relax. Like everything's going to be okay." And then it stopped. The ghost or whatever it was stopped making the noise. So with John, I'm a little worried about John going in, not necessarily believing the place is haunted. That's not the way to do it. You got to believe. You got to let them know you're okay with it. So hopefully he doesn't come back with any crazy stories. Actually, who am I kidding? I do hope he comes back with some crazy stories. I appreciate you all for listening, as you always do. It means so much. And thanks to John Smoltz, a Hall of Famer, joining us here on the show every single week. Means so much. So hope everybody has a great weekend. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. You can also watch on our YouTube channel, Flippin Bats Pod. There, we're on all social media as well at Flippin Bats Pod. So appreciate you all for listening. And remember, until next time, my friends, find your bat and flip it. Peace.